Imtiaz Suliman from Vunani Senti Fund Managers joins us now for a full look into the day that was in markets. Imtiaz, thanks so much for your time today. So global sentiment aside, it's been a busy day here at home with tons of company news. And I guess let's get straight into it. Naspers and Prosus releasing results, double-digit profit growth really being boosted by its e-commerce businesses, as well as some contributions from Tencent, that of course working in the group's favor. However, they're not really translating into share price movements. The last time I checked, Prosus was really hit hard today. What's the disconnect about? How are you reconciling what's playing out in markets and then what's playing out in the earnings picture?
Yeah, I think in terms of the overall result, pretty much in line with market expectations. We've seen a nice recovery in the different segments with regards to e-commerce, e-tail. And what we're seeing come through very strongly is a cash flow turnaround from Naspers and Prosus. So if you exclude the Tencent dividend, Prosus and Naspers now generates positive free cash flow on its own. But I think maybe where the market was a bit disappointed was that guidance was kept largely the same, despite some of the acquisitions that Naspers and Prosus has made. So I think that growth with regards to those acquisitions, we're looking at Despegar in LATAM. We're looking at the iFoods business as well, which is growing very strongly. But nonetheless, once that growth comes through, we should see the market expectations starting to factor that in as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes perfect sense. Now, moving over to private healthcare, Netcare flying high on the back of resilient demand and its digitization strategy really underpinning growth over the period. Just on the digitization strategy, Imtiaz, are there any concerns about the money, the capex being spent on innovation?
I think what Netcare has done very well was invest a lot into this digitization strategy a few years back. And now we're seeing the fruits of that investment coming through. So they did spend quite a bit in terms of digitization, the administrative functions, giving iPads to the nurses and the doctors, and cutting a lot of time that these nurses and doctors spent just in terms of documenting patient records. Also, some of the admin processes have also been digitized. And I think what we're seeing in terms of the margin is that Netcare is certainly generating a very healthy margin on the back of the strategy. So you look at the EBITDA margin, that was at 18.6%. Someone like a Life Healthcare is at 15.2%. So there's a bit of differences why there's that gap between Life Healthcare and Netcare. But what we're seeing from Netcare is certainly their strategy starting to play out.
And very healthy margins in a very depressed economic environment. So that's good to see. I mentioned that I was shocked by Prosus's share price. What shocked me even more was PPC's share price and where it closed, despite, the turnaround strategy starting to gain some traction. What are markets worried about here? Is the turnaround moving too slow?
I think from PPC's perspective, what they're doing internally is commendable. They're trying to increase their margin by looking for those cost efficiencies, saving on logistics, pushing through a bit of pricing. But in terms of the growth element, we haven't seen any big mega projects in South Africa in terms of that cement demand. And that's where it's lacking. So until we see, some good growth prospects coming through, and I think as GDP starts to pick up, we could see more activity from that front. So largely anticipated in terms of this result, but it's all about what's going forward and how does that play out in terms of our GDP growth and some of the big mega infrastructure projects.
Of course, that's speaking to the current economic environment. And we do chat to Matthias Cardarelli in a minute, so he'll provide a fuller picture of the earnings that came out today. Now, Imtiaz, before I let you go, where are you seeing opportunity at the moment? What's your stock pick?
Yeah, I'm going with Investec Bank. They came out with their results last week. And although it was a bit muted, I think they're moving in the right direction. So loan growth is starting to accelerate, which will play out in terms of their overall earnings profile, and also in terms of some of their strategic initiatives, starting to build out that wealth management business, looking for ways to optimize the cost base further, which will allow their return on equity to expand and capital efficiency. So I think they've got a very good business in South Africa, very much centered towards high net worth individuals and some of the big corporates. And from a UK perspective, there's also a bit of a niche bank that they have, which will also play out as that economy starts to recover. So similar to South Africa, the
Yeah.
UK has been going through a tough spot. But I think, we should see a gradual recovery come through as inflation comes down and the economy starts to pick up. So a good dividend yield out of Investec. And I think the growth might not be stellar, but at these levels, it's not pricing in a lot of growth.
Let's leave it there. Thanks so much for your time and taking us through the trading day that was. That was Imtiaz Suliman from Vunani Senti Fund Managers.